I'm Holly, 32 years old, and 6 weeks ago I woke up from a 9-hour spinal surgery with my body numb, my vision blurred from anesthesia, and 73 missed calls lighting up my phone. The first voicemail I listened to was from my father, and his calm, cheerful voice told me something that changed my life forever. While I was unconscious on the operating table, my parents had sold my condo for $425,000 to pay for my younger sister Megan's extravagant wedding, signing documents in my name without my knowledge, as if my life savings were nothing more than a convenient solution to their financial problems. For 8 years, I had worked nonstop to buy that small condo in San Diego, skipping vacations, working overtime as a software engineer, freelancing at night, because growing up I had learned that if I wanted anything in life, I would have to build it myself. My parents had always treated Megan like the center of the universe, while I was the responsible daughter who could take care of herself. When I turned 21, I was working double shifts to pay tuition while Megan received a brand new car. And when I graduated college, my parents skipped the ceremony because Megan had a small audition. Even when I bought my condo at 27, the first thing my father asked was why I didn't give that money to my sister instead. Still, despite 32 years of disappointment, a part of me kept hoping that someday they would see me as more than the quiet, dependable backup plan. That hope died the moment I heard that voicemail in the hospital room. I didn't scream or cry, I just stared at the ceiling and felt something inside me turn cold and clear. 2 hours later, I called my father and asked him directly if he had sold my condo, and he confirmed it without a hint of guilt, insisting that family helps family and that Megan's wedding was an investment in our social standing. When I reminded him that forging my signature and selling my property was a felony, he became defensive and accused me of being selfish, as if the real crime was my refusal to sacrifice everything for my sister yet again. My mother called soon after, repeating the same excuses and blaming me for creating drama while Megan was preparing for the most important day of her life. Listening to them twist the truth, I realized something painful but liberating. My parents had never truly seen me as their daughter, only as a resource they could use whenever Megan needed something. What they didn't know, however, was that 4 years earlier, I had quietly done something extraordinary for them, something they had completely forgotten about. Back in 2021, my parents were drowning in debt and about to lose their house to foreclosure. Despite everything they had done to me, I couldn't bear the thought of them becoming homeless, so I secretly hired a lawyer, created a small LLC, and bought their mortgage through an anonymous purchase, effectively becoming the owner of their house, while they unknowingly signed a lease and began paying rent to me every month. I never told them because I didn't want gratitude or recognition, I just wanted them to be safe. But lying in that hospital bed after learning they had stolen my home, I realized that the love I had extended to them had limits, and those limits had finally been crossed. 3 days after my surgery, my lawyer, Marcus Smith, visited me and confirmed that the documents used to sell my condo were fraudulent, the signature clearly forged, and the notary suspicious, meaning my parents had committed serious crimes. Unfortunately, the buyer was an innocent third party, so recovering the condo itself would take years in court. However, Marcus reminded me of something else. Legally, I still owned my parents' house, and their lease was set to expire 1 week after Megan's wedding. That realization sparked an idea, one that required patience, timing, and absolute control. Instead of pressing charges immediately, I waited. 2 weeks before the wedding, Megan called me, pretending innocence, while hinting that she had known about my assets and had casually suggested them to our parents, and soon after she posted dramatic messages on social media accusing me of being jealous and bitter. Relatives flooded my phone with criticism without asking for my side of the story, and I saved every message quietly, saying nothing. Then the wedding day arrived, a lavish ceremony in a 5-star hotel with white roses, crystal chandeliers, and 200 guests celebrating a perfect love story funded by stolen money. I sat in the last row beside my Aunt Patricia, the only relative who had always supported me, carrying a small envelope in my purse. The ceremony went smoothly, vows were exchanged, and everyone applauded while Megan smiled triumphantly, believing she had won. At the reception, my father stood to give a speech praising family sacrifice and generosity, even inviting me to come forward and toast my sister. Slowly, leaning on my cane, I walked to the stage and took the microphone. The room fell silent as I calmly explained that 6 weeks earlier, I had undergone major spinal surgery and had awakened to discover my parents sold my $425,000 condo while I was unconscious. Gasps spread across the crowd as I revealed the forged documents and the fraudulent power of attorney. My father tried to interrupt me, but I continued, explaining that I wasn't there for revenge, but to give Megan a wedding gift. Then I revealed the truth no one expected. The house my parents had lived in for 20 years, the house they believed was saved by an anonymous investor, was actually owned by me, and their lease would expire in 30 days. The room exploded with shock. Megan's new husband, Daniel, realized the wedding had been funded with stolen money and demanded answers. When Megan couldn't deny it, his wealthy family pulled him away to discuss annulment, while guests whispered and stared in disbelief. My lawyer stepped forward to confirm everything publicly, and in less than 10 minutes, the perfect wedding collapsed into chaos. I left the venue quietly while the truth continued to ripple through the crowd. Within days, the story spread among relatives and eventually online. Daniel annulled the marriage after discovering Megan had targeted him for his family's wealth. My father was suspended from his job during an ethics investigation. My mother lost her social circles, and Megan's influencer reputation disintegrated. 30 days later, I enforced the lease expiration, and my parents moved into a small apartment, furious but powerless. Standing alone in the empty house that had once been my childhood home, I felt no victory, only sadness and closure. I rented the property to a young couple and donated the income to a charity that helps victims of financial abuse. My back slowly healed, and over time, so did my sense of self. I eventually bought another home, smaller than the condo, but entirely mine again. Looking back now, I understand that setting boundaries isn't revenge, it's self-respect. Family should never mean sacrificing your dignity, and love should never require you to become someone else's bank account. Walking away from my parents wasn't easy, but sometimes the bravest thing you can do is accept that some relationships cannot be saved and choose a life where your worth is finally recognized by yourself, if no one else.